Hello, my name is Roman Djindjihashvili. For years already, I'm promoting some openings that for weaker to medium to even for strong players that gives white some positional advantage. So we are shooting not for immediate crush in the opening, but for the openings that are based on very solid and healthy strategical plans. So I had multiple requests on explaining some positions in the end of the opening that we frequently say, okay, and here we're going to end because white has good size advantage. But requests I get is to explain how to play those positions. Those positions don't win by themselves. If you had winning attack on opponent's king, that's a lot easier because winning attack, you know what you have to do. You have to go and try to checkmate opponent's king. And this is a lot more straightforward than playing with certain positional advantage. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to try to explain some positions that we get from after our opening is finished, and then we get to the middle game, how to play those positions. This is going to be extremely helpful for you to study, even for those who don't play these openings, because it's not about the opening. It's about the strategy of blockaded position. Once you blockade and once you determine the weakness for opponent's pawn structure, how do you take advantage of it? You will see dynamic and static aspects of the strategy, and basically I will do my best to make sure that you will be very, very successful once you reach those positions. So first, I want to talk and analyze some blockaded position from our repertoire in Scratch Gambit or two knight defense, knight f6, e5. We are not going to be discussing here opening part. We're going to be discussing positions after the opening. Castle, bishop c5, knight g5, f4, knight e4, and bishop e3. Now, this is probably the main position of whole opening and most important position. And here we have to know exactly what we are going to play, how we're going to play it. I have to point, before I make these moves, I have to point that, well, after f4, knight e6 will result with c3, and white gets different type of advantage. There will be no blockade, but there will be very strong attack on the king side. But that's not what we want to discuss now. If you want to look at it, you should pick up a copy of my DVD on the opening. So we are discussing position with knight e4, bishop e3, castle, knight d2, knight takes d2, queen takes d2, queen e7, knight b3. That's the beginning of blockade. If black takes, this is going to be a terrible position for black Now, let me explain why. You see, black can never play c5, never play d4. There is a weakness on a7, so which means black's rook is not free to move. And after knight will come to c5, white will have potential of playing f5. This is probably the worst kind of blockade for black. So it's the best position white can get. This position I should evaluate as completely lost for black. Now, question. You may ask legitimate question. Do we exchange queens here or not? This position is so bad for black. For example, rook f2 e8. That queen c5 is a very powerful maneuver because if queens exchanged, white king will be heading to d4. How do you play this position after exchanging the queens? Well, bishop is hanging, bishop f5. First of all, you must give this position static character. So which is, we go c3, on the rook to b8, we go b4, and if black plays a5, we go a3. Now we have static position that is terrible for black because king simply will head to d4. Let's see what else can black do here. Actually, they cannot do much. On f6, you have a luxury of playing rook f2 e1, which is probably the best choice, or even taking on f6, which gives black a little life after fe. But even then, after rook to f2 e1, position is almost lost. Because eventually rook's going to get exchanged. There is open file. King is going to head to d4. And every pawn on a queen side will become an easy target. Well, let me give you a simple example. Here, and king f7. We go king f2. Now, white dominates on the open file, and a little attempt to get some release will result to absolutely dead position for black. What can white do here? So, first of all, our knight needs support. So our king can be mobile, and also we can move the knight around without worrying about c5. This is like a formula how to play this position. This position is very easy to play. Now h5 may be a weak move, maybe gives us an easy target. We can go check, and on king d7, king c5, and then go knight a5. Any attempt of defense would fail here. How does white now convert this position? Now knight goes to much better square, d4. And you see, now black has no moves. And how we convert? It's many different ways. We can go g3 and simply waiting for Zugzwang. And this is a Zugzwang. bishop b5, we can make what looks like bad mistake, but in reality, absolutely winning continuation to exchange our powerful knight for a miserable bishop that will result complete Zugzwang, and we win every pawn on a queen side. Bishop b5 cannot be played, and there are no moves for black. Black loses everything here. Well, this is the positions after f6. So if black plays f6, but we said if we take. We don't have to take. We can go rook fe1. And now if black takes, on top of having powerful knight and blockade, we may also have a pass pawn on e5. Strategy is the same. King is heading to d4. Give absolutely no counterplay to black on any side of the board. On a5, we just go a3. Now, if black takes, we can take with c pawn, or we can take with a pawn, because d4, we can win this position two different ways. We can win this position by simply defending our d4 pawn, and you see there is absolutely no point of the board that white can ever attack. So now we want to go rook d2 and start climbing up. The other way to win this position is to take, and when black takes, simply go e6. Now, the knight on c5 is so powerful that winning d4 pawn will result to a mate, and any king f8 attempt will of course fail after rook f1. So you may say that rook f1 is an accidental opportunity. No, it's not. No, it's absolutely not accidental, because those kind of accidental opportunities will be all throughout this position. As far as tactics go, there will be tactics. When you have dominating position in the center and you completely control the game, chances of you have a tactical solution are extremely high. A tactical solution, well, tactic does not necessarily mean combination. Tactics mean concrete approach, where you have a shot that wins knight, bishop, rook, or promotes the pawn. This is all basic plan. You want to win on the blockade and slowly squeeze the light out of your opponent, or win in one shot. There will be on the way when black tries to resist. These one move opportunities, one shot opportunities are very, very high. And how do we win this position if black doesn't go rook b8? We already said we will be protecting the e5 pawn, bringing king to d4, and trying to activate the e pawn. So we just looked in this position, bishop takes e3. This is bad move also, on top of everything, with general principles, because all white strategy is on blockade, and after queen e3, blockading is achieved in the best possible way. The best possible blockade is when we have queen and the knight. Queen with the dark square bishop, if white had now, would have been okay also, but queen and the knight blockading c5 square is absolutely optimal. So let's try to play bishop b6 for black. Now white goes queen c3 and tries to make a blockade on c5. Now let's try to play f5. It's not a very good move, but it will best illustrate what white should do with this blockade and how to take advantage. Here is how. Well, suppose we go c5 with some piece with a bishop with a knight. Let's see both of those moves. If we go bishop on c5 and black takes, we have absolutely winning position we just talked about. Here we got knight and the queen combination blockade. By the way, in chess, it's known that queen and knight combination is in 90% of the time is better than queen and bishop combination. This is totally a winning position. But move we make here is knight c5. This is the correct move. And why? If black plays rook e8 and we go b4, suppose white takes, this is also a very good advantage for white, for a very big advantage, but not as good if we had the knight on c5. So why do we play knight c5 instead of bishop c5? Here is why. When you make some move, you shouldn't bet on your opponent's bad response, bad move. You should expect your opponent to make a good move. So the good move is queen should move to e6 or rook f8 to b8. As you see, bishop is pinned and we cannot take the queen. After rook f8 to b8, black is going to move the queen next move. Suppose we move the king, attacking the queen, and now queen e6. This position is not queen e6 or maybe even queen f7. Is not as good for white as the one where we could have knight on c5. Here is why. Because knight wants to get to c5. It's very difficult to do because you cannot make black take on c5. Although black had an opportunity to take on c5 with the last move. It looks like we're achieved the position we want. But after rook b5, we still have to maintain this blockade. And on b4, now a5. And after a3, rook b8, we experiencing with white slight discomfort. However, if also black plays queen f7, now we have to stand with a knight on b3 and a queen on c3 and wait when we can put the knight on c5. How are you going to put the knight on c5 unless black takes on c5? And if you take, there you lose all your advantage. You don't have any more blockade. And black is going to go c5 and will get probably an advantage on his own. The ideal will be now to play pawn from b2 to b4. But it's illegal. But if you manage to put pawn on b4, then you're going to have winning advantage. You're going to have winning advantage because then your pieces are free. You don't have to be defending your c5 bishop. For this reason, we play here knight c5, because in case black decides to take knight on c5, we're going to have permanent bishop on c5. And it's not as good as knight, but it's still very powerful. And you have to know this, that if we try to organize attack on the king side, then opposite color bishops going to be very much favorable for attacking side. For example, if we try to do rook f3, rook h3, in this position, we don't have to stay with queen on c3, protecting knight on c5 all the time, because we have pawn replacement. Pawn on b4 will do this job, and on a5, you can go a3, and there is no way black can ever interfere with this powerful blockade. Now, to show you a little more in this position, how are we going to win? About king h8. The beauty of this position that it's a 100% static position. You have to recognize that. And since the position is static, that means we can try several different things. One of the biggest advantages in this position are that white can try several different plans here. And not necessarily one of them, but one after another, which means that white has very, very easy game to play. And you almost like a building the plan and can play this position with your eyes closed. So, for example, you can put the bishop on d4. That's a nice position for a bishop on d4. Now black has to watch for e6 option for white. So suppose black finally takes. That's too much pressure from both pieces on d4 and c5. Suppose black takes. We definitely have to take with a bishop. You don't want to go to endgame now, because that increases black's chances for successful defense. And you don't want to take with a pawn, because that would be like absolutely horrible mistake, because that devalues power of white d4 bishop, and after bishop e6 you almost have no advantage, because bishop on d4 that was so powerful becomes very bad. So we obviously have to recapture with a bishop. And black moves queen e6. Now, how do we play this position? You have powerful bishop, controls f8 square, controls e7 square. Now, why those squares are important? They are extremely important when you go rook f3, followed by rook h3. Remember, now black can never play a5, because you're going to take, and this pawn is going to be enough winning power by itself without having any other type of advantage. Well, suppose black plays rook g8. You see there are two squares, e7 and f8. Black never put the piece there. Now you can go rook h3, and suppose black is cautious and defending itself. See how now you can switch your target. First of all, you can go rook f1, rook f3, and rook g3 again, and have another rook in attack. You have luxury of playing queen d4, attacking a pawn, and going rook a3 next move. So you can target king side, you can target queen side. The other way you can do here, go rook b1, because on queen d4 maybe black will play a5. So even a5 is not that great for black, because we can go a4. Now we are guaranteed. See, that's another. Now we get new positional aspect here. We have very powerful a pawn, pass pawn. It doesn't matter if black takes or white takes next move. Whatever black does, we're going to take. And we will activate this pawn. We're going to go a5. Pawn will be pushed to a7 unless black puts this kind of blockade. But then we can go rook a3 and rook g3. Now what happens? We're trying to attack on the king side. We have bishop out of the play, absolutely devalued bishop. We have powerful a5 pawn, and queen is passive, black's queen. We can go rook a to g3 and try to blast black's king position. So you can try one, and if that doesn't work, you can come back and play for a pawn. There are too many advantages. We cannot analyze this position move by move because it's not going to work. I'm showing you the kind of opportunities you have that will determine this position as very, very difficult for black. So let's go to the position with knight c5. So we cleared that position after knight c5 is much better here after b4. Now what else can black do? For example, on a previous move, knowing that we want to go b4 and support the knight to free the queen, suppose black goes a5. This is very, very interesting point. After a5, a5 creates another problem for black. Here is what? b3. This is like preventing a4. And why is b3 so good? Rook a b8. We want to go a3. King h8. And we put the bishop on d4. But now you may ask, but what is that? We still need two pieces, bishop on d4 and queen on c3, protecting c5 knight. I don't think we should go b4 here. I don't want to go b4 because pawn is on a5, and here is what we want to do. Rook g8, suppose. Well, we're going to go rook f3. Black goes bishop e6. They don't really have anything constructive to do. There is no g5 because this move will absolutely devastate black. So after bishop e6, we go rook g3, preventing g5 for good. Rook b8 to e8. Rook f1. This is all prophylactic moves to prevent black from playing g5. Queen f7. Now, why I never explained yet my statement that a5 create new weaknesses. Why does it create new weaknesses? Because here we play knight a4. This is a very powerful move. Black doesn't want to take on d4 because then we have queen and knight blockade that is going to be absolutely crushing. On the other hand, bishop position on b6 is weakened. You see, now black doesn't have two pawns protecting this bishop, and b6, so the pawn is hanging. So after knight a4, rook b8, now we put more pressure on b6 after queen e3, and we're trying to take on b6, and black is absolutely collapsed here. The reason why we played a3 earlier is to prevent black's rook from coming to b4 in future. And here, black cannot hold anymore b6 bishop, which has to be exchanged by black. And here we go. We got your knight on c5, the best looking blockade you can have, possibly rook c3, knight c5, and black is absolutely unconditionally busted here. Now you understand, I just explained to you, what do we do with a blockade? Do we rather have knight on c5 or bishop? We rather end up with a knight, but it's not always go according to the plan. So in this position, for example, we had a dilemma. Do we put the knight on c5 or bishop? Although we want to end up with a knight, we put the knight there. We don't mind ending up with a bishop, and we cannot count on our opponent's terrible mistake where they take. You see, the queen is not hanging, and knight is very uncomfortable protecting the bishop. Black has some chance to break the blockade because white does not have b4 move here. So that's another very important aspect of the blockade. Now let's discuss a probably considerably different type of blockade. For example, in this position, instead of taking on d2, which black does, black plays f5. Well, it's clear that white cannot tolerate this powerful knight on e4, so this knight has to be taken, and if black takes with the d pawn, this will result to very bad position for black because queen c4 is coming, white is first to get rook on d1, pawn on c6 is weak, so obviously you should expect black to take on e4. And this is different type of blockade. We still have dark square blockade, but you see pawn is on e4, not on f5. Pawn on e4 means that black's light square bishop is better than it was in the first example. Also, that means that we have to blockade d4 square, c5 square, and also e3 square. And we have to be careful because if black's center gets activated, they have three connected pawns in the center. So keeping blockade permanent, playing precisely here, is very, very important. We go queen d2, and bishop b6 is the only natural move. Here we go b4. It's understandable what we want to do. We want to go knight b3 and have a permanent blockade on c5. Suppose black goes a5. They're trying to open some files. That's not going to be successful because a5 is going to be met by a3 and black gets nothing. A lot more sense in playing c5. Here are two ways for us to play this position. Well, not here, but after taking. One is knight b3. I had mentioned this in my DVD, that knight b3 will give us complete blockade. But this is, now, I am challenging my own statement. I kind of want to play differently this position. The reason why is because after knight b3, black will take on e3, go queen e7, and here is very difficult for white to maintain this blockade. We are having problem supporting the knight on c5. We don't have a b pawn, so black can play rook b8 and then rook b6, and we are not that comfortable. On top of everything, potential of g5 creating counterplay, maybe even right away, is real. After extensive analysis of this position, this is something new I found out myself about type of blockade. So in this position, instead of knight b3, we're gonna treat this blockading position differently. Blockaded center d5 and e4, we're gonna treat as a weakness. Well, we're gonna treat d5, e4 pawn as a weak pawns. And the very powerful move is c4. Obviously, black doesn't want to take on c4 because after queen c3, white is going to have potentially two connected central pawns, and black's pawn's going to be falling apart. So after c4, only credible move for black is c6. Now we go knight c2. And you see, we are attacking d5 pawn and the bishop. And if bishop takes e3, then queen takes e3. Now, this position is very bad for black because not so much of a blockade, but because of weaknesses of the center. Queen e7, and now we go queen d4. You see, we're placing our pieces differently. After queen d4, black must do something constructive, protecting the pawn on d5. Suppose queen f7. We're going to take cd, cd, knight e3. And you see the serious problem of d5 pawn, which is hanging, and protecting d5 pawn will result to absolutely crushing position by white if they go f5. You see, black has e4 pawn instead of f5, and we're taking advantage of it by activating our central pawns. Black is completely devastated here. Black is totally lost. And again, let's go through this again. We went c4. It's a very powerful move. The only way Black can maintain this center is by c6. And now comes that plan. After c4 and c6, we can take now or take move later, take now and go knight c2. We are attacking d5 pawn with a check and bishop. Bishop takes e3. We go queen takes e3. And after queen e7, we go queen d4. And d5 pawn needs protection. Actually, the better way to do it for white is without taking on d5. Right away, knight c2. And after bishop takes, queen takes. And now we take and go queen d4. And when bishop protects the pawn, we can already go f5 or go knight e3, attacking d5 pawn, and also knowing that there is no way Black can stop white's f5, which will give white absolutely crushing position. Now we have disadvantages, has slightly different character. So we have blockade, and we have very dynamic position. We don't have static advantage, we have dynamic advantage. Static advantage is not as important here because it's very difficult for white to forever keep blockading these two squares and at the same time creating a play. So we're going to go f5, and now Black is facing crushing attack on the king side. We could go rook f4 followed by rook f1, and it's absolutely devastating position. So now we have to look at one more position from the two knights defense of Scotch Gambit. Suppose in this position, instead of playing bishop d7, the move that we looked, Black plays bishop c. Now, I want to explain nature of two different positions we're going to get, and I don't want to discuss this as an opening at all. So we play here bishop e3, and I don't want to say what would happen if we took on c6, bishop e3, and Black has here two different opportunities. One of them is bishop takes d4. We play queen takes d4, Black castles. Now our queen is hanging, so we take the knight, b takes c, and knight c3. We are accomplishing the blockade. Blockade because c5 cannot be played, queen takes d5, and after knights exchanged, there is bishop going to c5, and white will have very comfortable position. Suppose Black plays bishop f5. Now, if you relax here and make a castle move, then all of a sudden, instead of blockading position, you may get very bad position, because that's where Black breaks the blockade, and pawn on d5 cannot be taken because white simply loses a knight. After queen takes queen, Black has in between knight e2 check, and Black is going to end up with extra piece. So that's very important to know that here, instead of castling, white has to take Black's knight first and then castle. Now we achieved 100% very comfortable blockade with a very bad position for black, because bishop is going to go to c5, pawn on c3, after we retreat to queen c3 next. And then we're going to activate the f pawn. And bishop takes c2 is definitely favoring white, because rook f2 c1, and then white takes on c6. And now instead of blockading one pawn, we have blockading c7 and d5, and most likely we're going to win some material. This is not acceptable for black. So what we want to look at, one more thing, is in this position, what happens if black plays now bishop d7, now that they made us play bishop e3. So we take on c6, and we heading towards blockaded position. But suppose black plays queen e7. Now we're going to get very interesting type of blockading position, which is an endgame, and we have opposite color bishops in endgame, which altogether doesn't sound good because those positions are normally drawn, but not the one we're going to look at now. Now we play knight takes e4, pawn takes e4, and e6. So f takes e here is practically the only move, because if bishop takes, then black loses a piece. We quickly go through this variation. Black is lost a bishop, because if queen takes, bishop is hanging. If pawn takes, there is a queen h5 check taking the bishop. And if bishop takes e3, then white wins a piece after knight takes g7 check, followed by knight f5. And black is simply down a piece. Position is totally lost. So black must take with a pawn, and here we're going to get very simple combination. Knight takes c6, bishop takes, queen h5 check, g6, queen takes c5, queen takes c5, and bishop takes c5. Now, what do we get here? We get an endgame with equal number of pawns and opposite color bishops. Endgame is much, much better for white. Well, suppose black wants to castle along and not to lose a pawn by going a6. Let me tell you the very strong blockade. Here, this is something different from any other blockade we saw by now. We're blockading the e pawn with the king. We don't want to blockade with the bishop, because bishop is not as active on e3, and king needs a good square. By castling, king is going to be safe, but that's not a good square. Safety is not an issue here. King e2 will activate our king on e3, have very powerful position, and bishop on c5 stands very well. And e3, trying to exchange pawns and taking pawn on g2, is definitely going to fail because of f3 move, and black simply loses the pawn. And after king e2, let me show you quickly what may happen. One of the example outcomes of this position. I played a game like this, and I got the big advantage against very strong players, so I'm not going to show you a whole game, but I tell you how game was developing. King e3, king b7, rook a d1. What we want to do, we want to exchange one set of rooks and leave the other rook alive. Why do we do that? If we exchange one set of rooks, that will totally disable black's rook from creating anything on a d file. That's not like having two rooks on d file. So rook d1, and of course rook d5. This is very strong move. And unfortunately, I was forced to take on d5. Why am I forced? If I protect my bishop, my opponent is going to double the rooks on d file, and I don't want to give up d file, and I cannot protect my rook. So what I did is take on d5, and e takes d. Aha, now black doesn't have weak double pawns. But this position wasn't about double pawns. It was about blockade. And now we go h4. See, we have a lot better king than black's king. We have much better bishop. And we have more active rook after h5. But the only problem for white is that it's an endgame, and this is the opposite color bishops. Nevertheless, black's position is very difficult. King c8, h5. We're trying to get the rook in. g5. Okay, we got black's pawn on g5. So black's pawn in a dark square, which may be a target of our bishop. And if it ever moves, well, I played rook c1 here. If it ever moves, it may become a target the other way, king f4. So after rook c1, I'm obviously trying to open position a little bit, at least for us. There will be no open file for black, and we're trying to get the c file. After rook c1, rook d8, and here we don't want to go c4 because after dc, rook d3 may be coming. We go bishop d4 first, and on king b7, that's what happened. c4, pawn takes, rook takes, rook d5. Now we go g4. You see, this is concrete approach to the position, because black cannot attack pawn on g4 because of king takes e4, attacking rook and then f3. And if black cannot play bishop d7, then g5 is going to become permanent target. Now, you see, even if we exchange rooks, black may be lost because they may lose g-pawn and white will have powerful pass pawn. Extremely uncomfortable position for black and very difficult position from very beginning of this endgame, right from this position after king e2 and king e3. So this position is already, black has a raggedy pawn structure and the blockade of a e4 pawn with the king. That is big factor in this position. That's like having an extra piece in a play, because this is middle game. It doesn't mean we're going to go on and keep penetrating with king. No. After exchanging one set of rooks, we will consider penetrating with the rook. And this position is extremely bad for black as well. The reason why I'm promoting two knights defense, variation in French, and also in Sicilian Grand Prix, because I'm not so much promoting. Right now, in these days, I'm more of a trainer, coach, than chess player. So the preference I take is to have opening very sound, and most importantly, what are the openings where players learn the most. And I strongly believe, and it's going to be very hard to make me change my mind, that it's very hard to find better openings for learning the basic strategical ideas of playing chess. Now, I want to give you slightly different type of blockade that is very, very important to understand correctly. So, here we are playing Sicilian Grand Prix, and again, I don't want to get involved in talking and discussing different opening opportunities. I want to discuss certain types of position. Bishop b5, d6, d3. Often here, actually very often, my opponents, sometimes even on very high level, they make a move that is a horrible positional move. Horrible positional move if you know how to take advantage of it. Otherwise, it may go as unnoticed. They want to put their g8 knight on e7, so they play e6. Now, I don't think it's going to be understatement if I said, and I believe strongly, that this position after e6 is completely lost for black. Now, how can this be lost for black? And what does a blockade have to do with it? Well, it is completely lost for black, and blockade has to do everything with it. When we take on c6, pawn takes, and we castle. Unfortunately, on my DVDs about the openings, I can get to position which is winning for white and said this is winning for white, and I have no luxury of go into details and analyze final position carefully. No. After e6, we castled here, knight e7, white goes e5, and black has an option of taking on e5, pushing d5, or ignoring the castling. Let's look at all three of them. Taking on e5. Only way taking on e5 can be justified if black wins a pawn. Otherwise, totally weakening all queenside pawns and creating holes on d6 and f6 sounds ridiculous. Taking the pawn will win the pawn for black after queen d4 check, but black's position is absolutely lost. Now, idea is a bishop h6 or bishop f4 or knight f6 check, or maybe even simple bishop d2 followed by bishop c3 makes black's position totally hopeless. I never had volunteer go for it. So let's go back and discuss two other options. Another unlikely option is castling, which will get us to the blockading position number 1. We go knight e4. Attacking d6 pawn. Now, after d5, we can painlessly take c5 pawn. Black has no compensation. And we're going to have blockading position with extra pawn, which is absolutely awful for black. So that leaves us d5 opportunity for black. Why this position is lost for black? I will explain it. If the c6 pawn was on b6, black would have had great position. But c6 pawn is on c6. Now, does it really make that big of a difference, one double pawns? Yes, it does. It makes crucial difference, critical difference, and here is why. It's not so much because those are weak pawns. The main reason this position is lost for black because they have absolutely dead light square bishop on c8, which black may have one more chance to activate, but it's going to be expensive. So in this position, after we go knight a4, we're trying to take pawn on c5. And here, there is a last chance to activate this bishop on c8 by playing c4. Of course we can take on c4, but then black will go bishop a6. And the bishop on a6 will be active. I don't want to do that. We have to keep the character of the position completely closed. We go d4. Now, if white plays, after castling, if white plays c3, this bishop on c8 is going to be dead for the rest of the game. It's absolutely dead, and there is no route that black can bring this bishop into the game. So the last opportunity they have to activate this bishop will be c3 instead of castling. But then we can simply take back with the knight. Well, black does have activated bishop. But question is it worth whole pawn? No, definitely not, because black still has to resolve the problem with dark square bishop, and after we move rook e1, black has no compensation at all. We're going to come back with knight to a4, and white has simply extra pawn for nothing. But nevertheless, I believe this is the best black can get, because hanging on to a pawn, well, in this position, or move earlier, well, if they castle, that's going to result to absolutely hopeless position. Black will never see light of day. Knight on e7 will never get successfully into the game, and much less chances have either one of those bishops. Well, for example, if knight f5, we can always kick this knight. And we don't even mind exchanging these knights as long as we keep both bishops dead. How do we play this position now? For example, knights are exchanged. We don't take, but we let black take. How do we take advantage of this position? On rook b8, we have to go rook f2. We have to protect b2 pawn. You have to protect it because in case black attacks the knight, you don't want to play b3, because b3 it's something that will get black's light square bishop into the game. So you must make sure you don't make any pawn moves in this position. You don't make any pawn moves on the queen side. So that will keep all black's pieces absolutely hopeless. And then eventually, having huge space advantage on the king side, what you're going to do is very simple. You're going to go king g2 and play for h4, h5, opening h file. Not the f file, because that may bring the light square bishop into the game. Black is completely doomed. We just go with a pawn storm, opening h file, doubling on h file, and position is totally lost. So this is one type of blocked position. Now, suppose after knight a4, black plays queen a5. This is quite interesting position, and I want to show you that after c4, again, black is lost because of two dead bishops, and this position, this particular position, is much worse for black than the one I showed before, because after castling, we go b3, and now maybe black wants to go knight f5, which doesn't really make difference. b3, and suppose they go h5 now, supporting the knight. We can go queen e1, and now if queen goes to c7, remember, you are not in a hurry to take the c5 pawn. Taking c5 pawn is even a mistake, because you have to make sure black has the c5 pawn, because that's the pawn that keeps light square bishop, black's light square bishop, dead. We will take c5 pawn much later in the game, and we take it with the bishop. That bishop cannot be attacked. What I mean by that, if bishop goes to f8, then we can go queen f2. And when we take on c5, we want to make sure that our piece stands permanently on c5. For example, in this case, see, we're going to end up with a knight on c5. And knight can never be driven away. And why didn't we take here on c5? Well, of course it's good, it's okay, but we don't want to be pinned, and now we have to scramble when black start attacking our knight. Of course we can protect it and probably be okay, but after queen a5, now we have a problem what to do with the bishop. That's why it's not necessary at all to take that pawn on c5 right away. Pawn on c5 will never go anywhere. We can take it in 2 moves, in 10 moves, or in 30 moves. It never can be protected. So that's why we call bishop a3. We take with the bishop, maintaining all the advantages of the position. Just take a look at this position. We have here total advantage of dark squares, 2 dead bishops by black, and this is about as much of an advantage without having extra queen that anyone can construct voluntarily on the board. So this is totally hopeless. what we're going to have to do later? Exchange black's knight on f5 and slowly squeeze the life out of black in this position. That's why in this position, after queen e1, suppose queen takes e1, rook takes e1, and now black goes knight d4. Now, what about this position? After knight d4, we have to play this position carefully. Knight d4 may be played right away, or maybe even more accurate to play bishop f8 first. We go bishop a3. Actually, it's very little difference. And now knight d4. This position is so bad for black that I have played this type of positions. And in the game, I chose just taking the pawn and giving up an exchange. Now let me explain this, that this position I evaluate as completely hopeless for black. Black is going to have an exchange, and there is no possible way they can activate their bishops. But the reason why I don't recommend you to play this way is because you are in exchange down. You may get nervous being exchanged down. But position is really very simple to win. King goes to e3, knight goes to d4, and eventually you activate the pawn's queen side and you win it. But I don't want to go into details of this position because I can present you easier to understand plan. So instead of bishop takes c5, we take on d4. Pawn takes d4. Now we have to take the bishop. King takes. Now we go rook a to c1. Bishop d7. Knight c5. King e7. There we have blockading knight on c5 and huge positional advantage. Here is the basic rule. When you have dominating piece like a knight in most cases in the center of the board that cannot be chased away, what do you have to do? How does this knight can be decisive? What you have to do is organize the play, create the play in this area, in this queen side, where knight is going to play decisive role. So what we going to do after knight c5, king e7? Well, here is this simple way. Well, I play these positions like a clockwork because I have played them so many times, and it's strategically so clearly outlined to me that I will show you one example how this game went. Rook c2. I am not vouching for accuracy of the move orders, but it doesn't really matter. Position is so closed and so static that you can go wrong and come back and make it right. So g3, bishop c8, rook c1, rook d8, knight a4, bishop d7, king f2, king f8, Now, instead of making moves, we have to have the plan in our head. What are we trying to do? My plan was, and I'm very confident and positive that that's not the only plan in this position. My plan was to bring the king on a3, and it worked perfectly. Let's see what happened. King e2, king g7. There is nothing for black to do. King d2, bishop e8, rook f1. Obviously, the purpose of this move to free the c1 square for the king. Bishop d7. It's a great pleasure to play position where your opponent cannot move at all. So, king c1, bishop e8, king b2, bishop d7, king a3. So we achieved the position with king on a3. Now we want to go b4. So black plays a5. Knight c5, bishop c8, and now rook b1, and after rook e8, simply b4. Now this leads to complete devastation. A b4 pawn should be taken, ab, rook takes b4. Now the check on a8, it's not going to change anything because rooks will be exchanged one way or the other. We want to exchange one set of rooks to make our a pawn very powerful. Well, we can do this, and now we can do this. Rook b2. Rooks are exchanged no matter what, and if rooks are exchanged, next move rook a8, and game is practically finished. So my opponent instead took on b4, king takes b4, and this position is won simply by marching the a pawn. You see, king f8, a4, a5, and any attempt is of stopping this pawn is definitely gonna fail. King a5, and you see absolute helplessness with for black. Rook b2, a7, and my opponent designed few moves back, few moves ago. This is the strategy behind blocked positions. For example, we take this position maybe like 20 moves before that. What we see in this position is permanent weakness on c5, terrible weakness on c5, and absolutely disabled bishops. And it's a pleasure when you can make like 20, 30 moves in closed position. You can make plan, change the plan, come back to the same, and it's like your opponent is handcuffed and can't do anything and is absolutely disabled. This is the type of blockade. That's how you should play this position. And never go immediately after c5 pawn, or don't try to play h3 and g4 and create an attack on king side. No, this position requires slow grinding, and slow grinding can be achieved very easily. If black changes the pawn structure by playing dc, dc, that creates more problems for them, because d file will be completely in white's possession, and it doesn't help any of the black's bishops. Black's bishop did not become better by exchanging pawns in its center. That's why this double c pawn is giving black dead position. That's why this static position is completely lost. I don't think you should have any difficulties understanding how to play these positions. In the conclusion of this DVD, I want to bring you one game. It's not difficult to play game for white. I had it in French defense, but this is also blockade and slightly different type. So when you play blockading position, there are some general principles and also very simple logical thinking required. Okay, let's see. E46, this is our way to play French defense. D4, D5, knight C3, bishop B4, E5, C5, bishop D2, knight E7, knight B5, bishop takes, queen takes, castling F4, knight C6, knight F3, C takes D, knight B takes D4, knight takes D4, knight takes D4, knight C6, knight F3, bishop D7, castling, and black wants to exchange queens, and there is nothing white can do about it. We exchanged queens, and here we got static position as far as the pawn structure goes, and white has a lot better bishop than black's light square bishop. And in this position I played king d2. There are no queens on the board. King is going to e3, which is good centralized position, and bishop will go to d3. White has some advantage. But knight c4 check immediately changed the position. After knight c4 check, bishop takes c4, dc. Here, I could have gone king c3, attacking the pawn, but I don't think I'm attacking this pawn very much, because first of all I was concerned about bishop c6 move, and if king takes, then rook c8, then eventually white is going to have double pawns on f3 after bishop takes the knight, and also I don't think king on c3 plays correctly. So in this position, after bishop takes c4 and dc, first thing I want to make, and you have to realize here that black wants to play bishop c6 and sell this bishop and exchange this bishop for the knight. But we have a knight that is much stronger than bishop, even if bishop goes to c6. So we played knight d4 because this is a permanent piece, a permanent knight on d4. Rook fd8. Second time I didn't play king c3 because after b5 and possibility of a5, I thought my king will be uncomfortable on c3. I went king e3, which is a good move. Bishop e8, c3, rook d5, rook d2, rook d8, and rook d1. Let's talk about this position. We have blockading knight on d4, blockading black's pawns. But knight on d4 is completely shutting off the d file for black, and at the same time, at white's convenience, knight may move and open the d file. And this works just perfectly because white has, if white exchanges all four rooks, black is going to be lost because of white's superior king position. If we take the rooks off the board, king will immediately penetrate on d4 and c5. So black has to be aware of it. So in this position, after we doubled rook and king f2, here comes the decisive move. That's how you take advantage of your blockading dark square position. Knight c2. You want to exchange rooks. And again, after knight c2, bishop c6 was played because it's hard to advise any other move. Well, let me clearly show you why this position is totally lost for black. Actually, black is going to lose this position, and very quickly. Bishop c6, g3. We put all pawns on dark. Now, we penetrate with our king to d4, forcing b5 pawn move. But if we are forcing b5, that will open further penetration square for the king. King d4. And now we can go knight d4, and already black is experiencing problems they cannot solve. They are losing b5 pawn because bishop is hanging. But even if this wasn't the case, even if b5 pawn wasn't the problem and they can defend it, eventually black is going to lose all his pawns there. a4, now we're attacking b5, and king takes c4, followed by king b4. Position is totally lost. This would have been an outcome if black decided to exchange all rooks. So they played bishop c6, but that doesn't solve their problem. After bishop c6, rook takes d5, bishop takes d5. Obviously, if rook takes d5, we're going to have everything we just talked about with a knight a3 threat, a knight e3. So black is hopelessly lost. So rook has to be taken with the bishop. But then knight b4, king e7, and here we give our pride dark square blockading knight for a bishop that is bad. So after knight takes d5, obviously rook takes is very bad because, and after f5, white keeps pawns on f5 and e5 and penetrates on queen side, easily won position for white. So black cannot exchange rooks. E takes d. Now king d4, and black is helpless. White is going f5, g4, pawn storm, and king e6 is just temporary extension of the two inevitable. g6, rook f1. f5 is coming no matter what. So in this position, after king d4, g6 was played. And after g4 is totally winning position for white. I don't remember if I really played g4. I might have played rook f1 first and then g4. They have permanent weakness on d5. We go in g4 and f5, and its overwhelming positional advantage that makes black's position completely lost. So this will conclude our DVD on Blockade. Of course, if we want to make 25 or 30 DVDs on Blockade, we could. Because Blockade and different aspects of Blockade you can get in absolutely every opening that there exists. It can be in Tara's defense, in the Queen's Gambit declined, the Queen's Gambit accepted, King's Indian, Queen's Indian, everywhere. I gave you few examples. That doesn't mean that in the other opening there are different principles. No, Blockade is Blockade. If you learn this DVD, you can easily use the same principle of Blockade that you may get from any other opening. You may get it from Ruy Lopez, you may get it from King's Gambit, and so on. So I hope you learned some basics of the Blockade, and I wish you very good luck with it. Thank you.